Red Bull Racing were fined €50,000. Not for an illegal flaw, not for exceeding the cost cap, not for a dodgy engine mapping trick, for trying to remove a piece of sticky tape. That might be the most Formula One sentence ever written. At the United States Grand Prix in Austin, Texas, a Red Bull team member was caught on CCTV sneaking through the pit wall after the formation lap had already begun, and attempting to peel off a strip of tape that McLaren had placed next to Lando Norris's grid slot. They were spotted by marshals, who tried to stop them. The Red Bull employee ignored them and carried on anyway. €50,000, half of it suspended, for a strip of tape. But here's the thing. This wasn't some random act of petty sabotage. This was calculated. And it tells you everything about where this rivalry is heading. So why does a piece of tape matter so much? If you've ever seen an onboard camera shot from inside an F1 car, you'll know the driver can barely see anything. The halo blocks a huge chunk of their forward vision. The helmet restricts peripheral vision. And those grid box lines painted on the tarmac, from the cockpit, at the angle you're sitting, they're almost invisible. Norris had already been penalised for this. At the Bahrain Grand Prix earlier in the season, he misjudged his grid position and copped a penalty. So McLaren went to the FIA before the next race and said, "Look, can we stick a piece of tape on the pit wall as a visual reference point for our driver?" The FIA said yes, perfectly legal. McLaren started using tape markers at every race, and it worked. Norris stopped missing his grid slot. Problem solved. Until Red Bull decided to make it their problem. What happened in Austin wasn't a one-off. Red Bull had been doing this at previous races too, specifically targeting their closest competitors' grid markers. It had just never been caught on camera before. Red Bull's defence was almost comical. Laurent Mekies called it a misunderstanding. They claimed their team member was not aware of the efforts of the marshals to stop him, which is an interesting way of saying he ignored people waving their arms and shouting at him while he was on his hands and knees peeling tape off a wall. The FIA wasn't buying it either. The fine wasn't actually for removing the tape. There's no rule against that. The breach was entering the gatewell area after the formation lap had started, which is a clear safety violation. Norris had pole that day. Verstappen started second. And Norris still ended up finishing fourth after a penalty for exceeding track limits. The tape was the least of his problems. But the tape incident doesn't exist in isolation. It's just one chapter in what has become the pettiest, most entertaining rivalry in modern Formula One. At the Miami Grand Prix, McLaren CEO Zak Brown was photographed walking through the paddock carrying a water bottle labelled tyre water. A direct shot at Red Bull, who'd been accused of illegally cooling their tyres. Nothing was ever proven, but the paddock whispers were loud. So Zak Brown made himself a joke water bottle, and walked past the Red Bull motorhome with it. Horner fired back with his own joke. The two of them went back and forth like schoolchildren, and the fans loved it. This is what makes the McLaren versus Red Bull dynamic so watchable. It's not just about lap times, it's personal, it's petty, and neither side is backing down. But what's happening between these two teams feels different to normal rivalries. This isn't two teams competing on track and shaking hands afterwards. This is two teams that genuinely don't trust each other. The tape removal, the tyre water trolling, the constant press conference jabs. It's all building towards something. McLaren's response to the tape saga was perfect. They just started using stronger tape. No press release, no formal complaint, just better tape. Red Bull spent €50,000 because they couldn't get a piece of tape off a wall. But in all seriousness, this rivalry is exactly what Formula One needs right now. It's fierce, it's funny, and it reminds us that behind all the carbon fibre and computational fluid dynamics, these are still human beings trying to get one over on each other. Sometimes with billion-dollar cars. Sometimes with a strip of duct tape. The question is, where does it go from here? Because if Red Bull are willing to sneak onto the grid to remove tape, and McLaren are willing to walk past the Red Bull motorhome with troll water bottles, we're only getting started. Head to newsformula.one for all your latest Formula One news, results, and live timing. If you enjoyed this, drop a like, and we'll see you next time.